Okay.
Say that thing ain't running. You don't know that.
No, I made sure. Okay. We're in Genesis 46. How long has it been since y'all looked at Genesis 46? Long time, huh? Yeah.
I'm seeing that.
So this is, I thought about this today. It's probably not significant at all. Maybe it's a coincidence if you believe in such a thing. But remember how Judah decided that he was going to give his life for Benjamin's safety rather than Reuben said, I'll pledge my two sons to Jacob. And Reuben says, no, I'm going to pledge you my life. If he doesn't come back, you can have my life. And then ultimately surrenders to the point of slavery, which turns out to be worse than giving up your life, as we will find out in the Exodus. If we get that far, I guess we'll go into the Exodus next time. But I was thinking about that. So Judah says, you can have my life in the place of Benjamin. And then when the nation divides, north and south, who sticks together? Judah and Benjamin. They're the tribes in the south. I never thought about it till today. I was thinking about it. The other 10 tribes of the north, they do their thing. Yeah, Benjamin and Judah were the tribes of the south. Yeah.
Oh. I thought Benjamin was part of like Israel proper, like the nations.
It was before the north and south, before Jeroboam, son of Nebat, comes along and rebels against Rehoboam, and he tries to tries to take the throne from Rehoboam. Actually, Rehoboam becomes a bad king. He's going to overtax his people, and he's going to be oppressive to them. And Rehoboam rebels, but how does he do it? He goes into idol worship as his way of rebelling against the evilness of Solomon's heir. So when the nation split, Judah and Benjamin are there together. And I just thought that was interesting. Like I said, it may not mean anything, but it was fun to think about for about 3 minutes. So, so here we have the picture again. Jacob leaves for Egypt, and of course Egypt is down. So we have this having to leave the land that God had promised and go into an exile of sorts, okay, in order to survive, in order to make it through so that the promise ultimately can be fulfilled, because without a genealogy, there is no promise. So the genealogy is intact in Egypt, but the land, of course, is not. It can't be carried to Egypt. So Israel set out with all his men who had come and came to Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to God of his father Isaac. That night God spoke to Israel in a vision, and he said, Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob replied, here I am. We've gone over this part of this. I just want to go over it again before we get to the genealogy and the names again. God said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will bring you back. Joseph will close your eyes when you die, meaning that you're going to die there, but Joseph, the one you've cared for and loved so much, is going to be there with you. So Jacob left Beersheba. The sons of Israel took their father Jacob in the wagons Pharaoh had sent to carry him, along with their dependents and their wives. They also took their cattle and possessions they had acquired in the land of Canaan. Then Jacob and all his offspring with him came to Egypt, his sons, his grandsons, his daughters, and his granddaughters. Indeed, all his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. So there is no possibility of a family cropping up outside of the core family that could claim a promise. Everybody is in Egypt now. Okay? And so these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt. Jacob and his sons. And boy, there we go. We're not going to read all those because I would mispronounce nearly all of them.
But they have all of them there.
But they're all there. This is the whole family that are listed there. And so, and those of Jacob's household came to Egypt, 70 persons. So there's 70 of them.
That's the size of our family. No,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
I've done the math. I
Yeah.
had to.
Yeah, just getting ready for a wedding, huh? There's 70 of us?
There's-
That's scary. That really is scary. Hadn't thought of that.
So I think it's between you and my side, but same.
There's really probably more. You just don't know.
Yeah, I didn't invite all of them. This was just immediate.
So there's always been discussion, or at least I've heard discussion of when Jesus sent out the 70 or the 72. Which one is it? And I've read commentaries that say, well, if it's 70, it refers back to the 70 that went down to Egypt. I don't know why that would be, but I've heard that argument. I'm not making it, by the way. The numbers in the Bible are interesting to an extent, but I think that's carrying it a little too far.
And then there's just some numbers you have no idea where they came from.
Yeah, don't know where
Someone
they came
had to vary
from.
somewhere.
Just happened to be that number.
Yeah.
There may have been 71, but it was rounded. That's
Yeah.
happened a lot too.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, all the time.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
I don't make note of it.
All right, so now Jacob had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to prepare for his arrival at Goshen. Remember the discussion about Goshen? Tim Mackey in the Bible Project said that actually what's going on here is there's a one-letter difference between the Hebrew word for Goshen and garden. So Garshin is how you might say Goshen, and it's just one letter off. So you could say that he's preparing for his arrival at the garden. And when they came to the land of Goshen, Jacob hitched the horses to his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. Joseph presented himself to him, threw his arms around him, and wept, I love that, for a long time. So this is the reunions of all reunions. And you would think there would be more said about it. But there's nothing left to say. They just hung on each other and cried. I love that picture. It's kind of the prodigal son picture that you get, when the youngest son comes home. They just hang on each other. Then Israel said to Joseph, I am ready to die now because I've seen your face and are still alive. So like we said earlier, that there's this cloud of death that's on Jacob's mind all the way through this whole episode while everything is happening to make sure that his life, his ancestry is sustained. So it's a little bit of a contrasting thinking there. Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's family, I will go up and inform Pharaoh, telling him, my brothers and my father's family, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds. They also raise livestock. They have brought their flocks and herds and all they have. When Pharaoh addresses you and asks, what is your occupation? You are to say, your servants, both we and our ancestors, have raised livestock from our youth until now. Then you will be allowed to settle in the land of Goshen, since all shepherds are detestable to Egyptians. Okay, so look, just make yourself out to be detestable, and you'll get the best land, because the best land is where the animals are raised. So it's kind of a weird thing. Just make sure you tell them that you're shepherds, and he won't have nothing to do with you. Make sure he sends you to Goshen. So I thought that was kind of. Yeah, it's kind of a weird deal.
You're shepherds.
Yeah, we got just the place for you.
Please go away. Stay there. Just stay in there.
Yeah. Yep. So Joseph went and informed Pharaoh, my father and my brothers, with their flocks and herds, and all they own, have come from the land of Canaan and are now in the land of Goshen. Okay, this is something interesting too. All right. Pharaoh's the Pharaoh.
Yeah.
He's like the king. But Joseph knows exactly how to get what he wants out of the Pharaoh. He knows more about the Pharaoh and how to manipulate than the guy in charge is. So it's like Joseph really is the king. He really is in control. He took 5 of his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh asked his brothers, what is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants, both we and our ancestors, are shepherds. And they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to stay in the land for a while, because there is no grazing land for our servant sheep, for your servant sheep, and since the famine in the land of Canaan has been severe. So now, please let your servants settle in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Now that your father and brothers have come to you, the land of Egypt is open before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best part of the land. They can live in the land of Goshen. If you know of any capable men among them, please put them in charge of my livestock." So here we are. Okay, tell them you herd livestock, and so he's thinking, I bet these guys are as sharp as Joseph. So I'm going to put them in charge of my livestock. All right. So again, Joseph is kind of, even passively, is kind of directing the actions that are happening here. And of course, we know from the reader vantage point that this is God doing all this stuff. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob and presented him to Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Wait a minute, we haven't seen that in a long time. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many years have you lived?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "My pilgrimage has lasted 130 years. Man, my years have been few and hard, and they have not reached the years of my ancestors during their pilgrimages." So he's saying, I'm 130 years old. It's been a hard life, and I'm not going to make it as long as my ancestors made it.
I did my word.
Yeah. He kind of brought a lot of it on himself. Okay, but it's interesting. He went to Joseph and he blessed Pharaoh. Okay, so who's been doing the blessing all this while? Okay, as we've looked in Scripture, who? God has. Okay, and so even when Isaac was offering his blessing, it was God's blessing. It was the blessing of the promise. So here's the first time that we see that the blessing is appreciated even outside the kind of chain of passage that God provides. Go ahead.
So in this sense, Joseph is kind of taking a God role to Pharaoh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like, let's say, like, in a sense, he is the priest to Pharaoh.
Right.
And what is that beautiful verse? I think it's Exodus 19. What is that whole concept with Moses? You will be like God to them. To the people of Israel. And here it just seems like everything's perfect. That's why I like this part of Genesis. Everything's like good, right? Because you've got Joseph, he is acting as the good priest to the nations, who is Pharaoh. And that's what Israel's going to be instructed to do later. But like, this is all where it's good. Like, he's the example that we need to follow of like God working through Joseph here. Joseph blessed him? And
Jacob blessed him. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
So they're all shepherds. Who's the chief shepherd? Jacob. And Jacob offers the blessing.
Ah, come on.
I was trying to get you there.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So he's the chief. This whole thing is about who's shepherds. Who are the shepherds? Well, we're the shepherds. Well, now he's met the chief shepherd, and the chief shepherd is providing a blessing. So, and who's
I mean, even in Egyptian culture, the father was more important than the son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he sees Joseph and he loves Joseph, Pharaoh does, but he also realizes that that's his father. So he's still going to be considered the head of that family.
So Jacob is elevated as the result of his blessing that he offers, and Joseph takes a place of subservient to his father, but he's the kind of like the under shepherd. Anyway, so can it add to that whole image of, which we stretch sometimes, about Joseph being a type for Christ, where the father's providing the blessing, and Joseph is, for lack of a better word, he's kind of set the stage for that to happen.
Yeah. He's done the work necessary to bring about that blessing.
Yeah, which is what Jesus does for us. See? Yeah. The storyline,
Just write a book.
you can't escape it, man. It's right here. It's always here. You just got to slow down long enough to read it. And I never have before in my whole life. It's frustrating that I've taken this long. Okay, so then Joseph settled with his father and brothers in the land of Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. So Ramses, not only are they in Goshen, but it also is the land that belongs to Ramses. And Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's family with food for their dependents. So they're in Goshen, the garden, and man, like Harris said, everything is just beautiful. It's just all come together for them here. But there was no food in the entire region, for the famine was very severe. The land of Egypt and the land of Canaan were exhausted by the famine. That's such a strong word.
Has languished.
Yeah.
By reason of the famine.
Yeah, I think that's... I was looking for... I lost my information screen. I don't know what happened to it. Oh, no. Anyway. So Joseph collected all the silver to be found in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain they were purchasing, and he brought the silver to Pharaoh's palace. When the silver from the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was gone, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die here in front of you? The silver is gone." Okay, I had trouble bringing this all together in my mind. Who are they buying? Who is Joseph buying grain from? I really had a hard time putting this. I never even paid attention to this passage ever before. But anyway, the food's gone, and the way to get food is gone. So Joseph said, "Give me your livestock, since the silver is gone. I will give you food in exchange for your livestock." So this is how it worked. So Joseph gathers up all the wealth of Egypt so that people can buy the grain, so that wealth goes into the treasury of the Pharaoh, and now he's taking their livestock. Is that am I reading this right?
Are you getting that, like Joseph, in verse 14 it says, Joseph collected all the silver he found in the land of Egypt in exchange for the grain they were purchasing.
Yeah.
So he was receiving the money, right? So they were buying it from him.
They're buying it from him. Yeah.
And then they ran out of silver. Why should we die here in front of you? So he's like, "Okay, give me your livestock."
I got you. So he's just taking payment.
Everything.
So they're down to nothing. See, I was reading that. I was having the hardest time thinking he was gathering up the silver, but what he was saying, he is just receiving payment, which would have made much better sense for me.
Yeah.
But Jesus said, Joseph said, "Give me your livestock, since the silver is gone. I will give you food in exchange for your livestock." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave them food in exchange for their horses, their flocks of sheep, the herds of cattle, and the donkeys. That year he provided them with food in exchange for all their livestock. So,
Why didn't you just eat the livestock?
well, you didn't eat your source of that was like that's their livelihood. You might as well eat your car. Yeah, I mean, really, that was the same kind of thing. Why would you eat your donkey? I mean, he's doing all the work for you. But Joseph said, "Give me your livestock, since the silver is gone, and I will give you food in exchange." Okay, I already read that. When that year was over, they came the next year and said to him, "We cannot hide from our Lord that the silver is gone and that all of our livestock belongs to our Lord. There is nothing left for our Lord except our bodies and our land." So they are down to the breath in their lungs, okay, in the land that they live on. "Why should we die here in front of you, both us and our land?" So now here we are. They're as connected to the land as God has connected Abraham's family to the land. This is life, okay?
That's the lifelong fight.
Yeah, that's right.
Generation long. That's a new fight.
So then he says, "Buy us and our land." in exchange for food. So what are they doing? They're selling themselves. Okay. Then we with our land will become Pharaoh's slaves. Give us seed so that we can live and not die, and so that the land won't become desolate. In this way, Joseph acquired all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh, because every Egyptian sold his field, since the famine was so severe to them. The land became Pharaoh's, and Joseph made the people's servants from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land he did not acquire belonged to the priests, for they had an allowance from Pharaoh. They ate from their allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their land. So interesting, right? It's kind of how the way the priesthood was set up by Moses. Joseph said to the people, "Understand today that I have acquired you and your land for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you. Sow it in the land. At harvest, you are to give a fifth of it to Pharaoh, and 4/5 will be yours as seed for the field and as food for yourselves, your household, and your dependents." So interesting thing happens. Up until the time they're sold themselves into slavery, they just received food. There's no indication that they're sowing and planting. But now, once that they are slaves to Pharaoh, they've been given the onerous responsibility of taking seed and growing their own food. So it's almost like a double cost to them. Before they were just receiving food. Now that they're slaves, they've had to sell themselves and the land. And now they've got to make the land produce in the midst of a famine. And not only that, they owe Pharaoh 20%. They've got to set back some of that harvest for seed for next year, and that leaves them what they're going to live on. So things are not getting better in any sense of the word for the Egyptians. All right?
Well, it was either that or die.
Either that or die.
Yeah.
So when your back's against the wall, you do what you got to do.
You skipped a little part. You skipped a little part.
Oh, I did?
Verse 26, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's good.
Oh,
Moving fast.
it's
Yeah.
You have saved our lives, they said. We have found favor with our Lord and will be Pharaoh's slaves. So Joseph made it a law, still in effect today in the land of Egypt, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. Only the priest's land does not belong to Pharaoh. So an interesting thing happened in this whole process. A new economic system was born in Egypt, to where whenever you planted land, now that it's on Pharaoh's land, because he owns everything, you give a fifth to him.
Is that still a government rule today too, probably?
I don't know, but it seems to be a
Because don't
government
they
rule
have
for
kings-
us.
Don't they have kings in Egypt, though?
The what?
Don't they have kings in Egypt?
Well, in Egypt now, they have a president. They operate on a president and a loosely organized parliamentary system. But how much of it's owned by individuals? Probably most of it. And so I'm sure that kind of thing goes on. It's kind of like, I always think of Central America. They have private land ownership, but in order to harvest off of your own land, you have to pay the government 50% of what you make.
What? Israel,
Yeah.
you don't own your land, the government owns it.
Right.
Israel owns land. You can build on, do whatever, but it does not belong to you.
Yeah.
Your house belongs to you, you're working, but the
Yeah.
land belongs to Israel.
Yeah, yeah, and Central, like Honduras, and I learned this crazy thing because I've always been amazed at how the cost of bananas never go up, y'all. I've been paying the same for bananas ever since I was in high school. How in the world does that happen? How does that happen?
I'm the only ones that don't have to charge us 4 times more.
Yeah, how does that happen? Well, because all the land is privately owned, but you have to do business with Del Monte and Dole and all those people to get your product out, and so they just don't pay you as much to get it out. You're working as slaves. The people that own their land and actually pay taxes on the land, the conglomerates set the price, and they're just stuck with it. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. So Ron Sider years ago wrote a book called Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger. And he explained that system in that book. That was in the 70s. And it's still the same way today. It hasn't ever changed. It's a corporate money grab, and the whole country has to pay. So when we talk about corruption in those places and why they can't change, I can tell you why they can't change. American fruit growers control the whole thing, and they don't want it to change because they're making tons of money. Yep. So that's what happened there. Everything became the Pharaoh, which actually this is a foreshadowing for the people, okay? Because what happens when it becomes much easier for Pharaoh to enslave the Hebrew people later because he's in control of everything. Yeah. So Israel settled in the land of Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property in it and became fruitful and very numerous. Okay? We're fulfilling the command of Genesis. What Jesus said, the blessing of Genesis, what God said. Now Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, so he's 147 years old. When the time approached for him to die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have found favor with you, put your hand under my thigh and promise me that you will deal with me in kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt. When I rest with my ancestors, carry me away from Egypt and bury me in their burial place." And so Joseph answered, "I will do as you have asked." And Jacob said, "Swear to me." So Joseph swore to him. Then Israel bowed in thanks at the head of his bed. So he's in his bed. He's not going anywhere. This is the end for Jacob. Now, any comments about any of that? This is kind of it kind of feels like a winding down, to the end of Genesis. We're at this place where they left the promised land, and there was a famine, but they have really, you can tell, it's just kind of settling in. The only thing that reminds us differently is that little interchange with Joseph and Jacob saying, "Look, when I die here, I don't want to be left here. I want to go back to where my ancestors are buried." It's kind of a reminder for us and also for the characters in the story. So sometime after this, Joseph was told, "Your father is weaker." So he set out with his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," he summoned his strength and sat up in the bed. Okay? It's a great picture. One good last burst of energy.
I asked a question I was wondering. Is that where people get hung up on not cremating because Jacob was so adamant about his bones and taking them out?
I think that's a lot of it. Yeah. And that was, I don't know why people get hung up about that. Cremation was such a common thing, and it probably is that.
For the Israelites, it was always about the bones, putting them in those boxes.
You put them in a sarcophagus and you carried them around. Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yeah. And then he said, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz," this is Jacob talking to Joseph, "in the land of Canaan, and blessed me. He said to me, I will make you fruitful and numerous. I will make many nations come from you, and I will give this land as a permanent possession to your future descendants. Your two sons, born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt, are now mine. Ephraim and Manasseh belong to me, just as Reuben and Simeon do. Children born to you after them will be yours, and will be recorded under the names of their brothers with regard to their inheritance. When I was returning from Padan," I guess that's how you say that, or Paddan, "to my sorrow, Rachel died along the way, some distance from Ephrath in the land of Canaan. I buried her there along the way to Ephrath." That is Bethlehem. Interesting, huh? When Israel saw Joseph's son, he said, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons God has given me." So Israel said, "Bring them to me, and I will bless them." So what's going on here? Okay, Joseph has had these two sons, and Jacob's claiming them as part of the inheritance that God has promised him. So they're born in this place outside the land, okay? But this is Jacob saying, in effect, doesn't matter. They're born into the genealogy, all right? So now there's Joseph, but there's these two sons, and of course, when we go into the promised land, what happens? There's the tribes, but Joseph's tribes portion is split between the two sons, and it's because Jacob has arranged for this to be so. So why is this so important to Jacob?
Because probably those boys wouldn't have gotten, those tribes wouldn't have gotten anything.
Yeah, so
They needed nothing. Joseph needed nothing.
right.
Well, he didn't need anything, but Jacob needed to do this, I think, because of the tribes. They had to be brought in for them to maintain who they were.
Part of the original plan.
So never mistake that these are Egyptians because they're born in Egypt. These are children of the promise, just like the rest of my sons.
Because they were Joseph's.
Yeah.
And Joseph belonged to Israel.
Yeah. So I just thought that was important to point out that there's an effort here as Jacob is leaving the scene to secure the genealogy. He doesn't know.
Didn't Manasseh and Ephraim go into?
All right, so what's
happened to Jacob?
Yeah.
Essentially, he got the blessing.
It happened to Cain and Abel. It happens. It keeps happening.
Yeah.
And why does it keep happening? Because you can't claim the blessing simply because you're first. Yeah. The blessing comes as a result of providence that's placed there by God. Yeah. Then he blessed Joseph and said, so he puts his hands on the son and blesses Joseph. The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day. First time we've heard God mentioned as shepherd, and it's on the heels of this whole narrative about Jacob's family being shepherds. So God has been my shepherd all my life to this day. The angel who has redeemed me from all harm, may he bless these boys, and may they be called by my name and in the names of my father Abraham and Isaac, and may they grow to be numerous within the land. All right, so he's speaking this to Joseph, but he's blessing the boys. When Joseph saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, he thought it was a mistake, and he took his father's hands to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's. Joseph said to his father, "Not that way, my father. This one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a tribe, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his offspring will become a populous nation." So he blessed them that day, putting Ephraim before Manasseh when he said, "The nation Israel will invoke blessing by you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." So here we are. Kind of the same thing again. God has chosen that he's going to bless through the younger, what might be considered the weaker, what might be considered the one that doesn't deserve what is happening. God works all these things out where his blessing is right where it needs to be. So.
And for Jacob to have reached out and grabbed it, as the younger, he's doing it on purpose. That's the old man.
Right. Okay. So there's no making up for Jacob. You would think, okay, I remember this story, Jacob saying, I remember when I was younger and I received blessing when I really shouldn't have received it. But so in his old age, what is he realizing?
It's all clear. He's not hiding anything. There's no deceit here.
He's doing it right.
No
He's
deceit.
explaining it.
No
Here's
hiding.
hey, why are you doing this? Here's why.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a lot different now. It's not by
He's
God.
learned. He has learned he doesn't have to steal.
Yeah.
You know, he was in birth and then at death with the first.
Yeah.
I mean, he had to steal it, but he knows he can pass the blessing.
And Joseph thinks he's making a mistake, and he's saying, "No, I'm not making a mistake. This is the way it's supposed to be." All right. So before, when he was younger, he had no idea that was the way that God wanted it to be. He thought he was stealing the birthright. And now he's understanding that, no, this is the way God wants things to be, and this is how it's going to be. Even though it may be hard to swallow sometimes, this is what God's up to. So, verse 21. Oh, wait, what does he say? The nation Israel will invoke blessings by you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. So, you would want to be like Ephraim, but would you want to be like Manasseh? So what is he referring to there? Very important. Jacob brings them into the family. Okay? This foreshadows what the nation of Israel is asked to do for all the world, right? We're going to make you a nation of priests. You're going to bring other nations into the family. So when he's saying that the nation Israel will invoke blessings by you, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, who will the nation of Israel be invoking a blessing for? It's by these two. It's by the nation of Israel, but who will they be blessing? And I would say it's the other nations that are being brought in, like Ephraim and Manasseh. Am I wrong there?
No,
That's kind of how I'm seeing that.
we are one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So God hasn't laid out his charge to the nation yet to be a nation of priests, but in a real sense, Jacob has performed that way by ensuring that these two sons are a part of the family line, a part of the genealogy. So anyway, that's the way I was seeing it. I don't know if that's right. I couldn't find anything that was, I don't know, definitive. It does ensure a coming generation that is going to
It's still
be a part of all of
today.
it.
Those of us who bless Israel, God's going to bless, and those who curse, He's going to curse.
That's right. That's right.
2022, it's still working today.
Yeah. That's right.
Did we do verse 21?
Did we?
You got to wrap that one up.
Oh,
you did- you-
Look, I'm about to die.
He sees the big numbers and he's like, let's go.
Yeah. I'm about to die. He's always about to die.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's going to happen this
He
time.
was a little bit dramatic.
Yeah.
He already deceiver, wasn't it? His personality.
Yeah.
Trickster, our oh,
Isaac
God.
was the same thing because Isaac, whenever Jacob was like, get blessing, Isaac was like about to die, and then he went to Paddan the ram, and then came back and he was still alive.
Yeah, he never would die. Yeah.
14 years I think, or something.
Yeah, right.
He was
Yeah.
still alive.
Yeah, that idea about dying, they never got down too good.
Kind of like when Jesus says, "I'm coming soon." It's like, what do you mean by soon, dude? Like,
Yeah, he just told Pharaoh, oh, man, I think it's about over for me. And then 17 years later, it's like a punchline in a movie.
yeah.
When you have that long of a lifespan, it might seem quick to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he says, I'm about to die, but God will be with you and will bring you back to the land of your father. So here we're getting to the end, and here's the great promise. God is not going to forget the promise that he's made. So he's basically saying, this place where we are now, this is a place of exile. It's not our home. And God's going to take us to our home. So geography and genealogy is you can't escape it in Genesis and Exodus. It's the way that God has designed for life to be. And of course, when Jesus comes, the genealogy and the geography changes. Jesus becomes the genealogy we share in his life, and the geography is no longer ground that we walk on, but it's the heart where he dwells. But anyway, over and above what I'm giving your brothers, I am giving you the one mountain slope that I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. So Joseph, he's saying here, Jacob is saying, kind of divided up this land, but you're going to get this one place that's really very special to me. It's a place I took from the Amorites. The pesky Amorites never go away. These descendants of Ammon that are always a problem. So Jacob's last words, man, we are just about here, aren't we? Then Jacob called his sons and said, gather round, because I'm about to die. No, he didn't say that there. And I will tell you what will happen to you in the days to come. So now Jacob is kind of acting like a prophet. He's been a king, in a sense, for his people. He's acted as a priest at various times where he's administered sacrifice on the behalf of he and others. So he kind of fills all these prophet, priest, king roles that pop up every now and then in individuals. David's one that comes to mind. Of course, Jesus, but there's others that take on this role. So they're very pivotal in the whole story, the whole thread. Come together and listen to your father Israel. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first fruits of my virility, excelling in prominence, excelling in power. Turbulent as water, you will not excel, because you got into your father's bed and you defiled it. He got into my bed. When did all that happen?
It did happen.
I don't remember Reuben messing up like that. Was that?
Let me see. It might have a cross.
Oh, wait, I do. I do, with one of the concubines.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Bilhah?
Yeah, Bilhah. So he's had enough of Reuben. Reuben, it's done for you.
By the way,
I didn't
this,
get Reuben.
this section so hard to translate. Like poetry is
Oh.
just ridiculous in Hebrew.
And you did Genesis, didn't you? Did you do the whole thing?
Yeah, no, we took pieces, but this was the last one we did. And it was like,
Yeah, I imagine it's
so hard.
Yeah, you could
But
say
you
see
can
Jack
make-
run in Hebrew, and I still couldn't do it.
But this, I remember this being like especially hard. Like we sat there in the class and just like the
Blown
person was
away.
like,
A lot of different forms.
yeah, different. Oh my gosh, so many different vocabulary all over the place.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
some very, very much so like rare vocab, but it still like makes sense. It's just like I don't really know exactly what it's trying to say, but like you get the point,
You get the
know?
gist.
Yeah, it solves is easier. This is really tough.
Look, these people that translate this stuff, they have my hat. I mean, really, I don't know how they do it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their knives are vicious weapons. May I never enter their council. May I never join their assembly. For in their anger they kill men, and on a whim they hamstring oxen. Their anger is cursed, for it is strong, and their fury, for it is cruel. I will disperse them throughout Jacob and scatter them throughout Israel. Man. Okay.
That was the real
4
one that
down.
killed us.
But they were pretty bad dudes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
They can go in and kill everything.
Let's,
And Jacob said, glad you did it, but you're going to be scattered.
Yeah.
I'm not giving you anything to do.
man, you start hamstringing oxen just because you want to do it. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think about it, Simeon, what? Absorbed by Judah, right?
Yeah.
You look at the maps, and you're like, where's Simeon at? Well, it's because they were like this little bubble in Judah, and eventually just like
Just
in
took
Judah.
it. Yeah.
And then, of course, Levi didn't get any land inheritance.
Right.
Levi was
He's
scattered.
he's
right?
scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. So Judah,
Go, baby.
here we go. Your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the necks of your enemies. Your father's son will bow down to you. Judah is a young lion. My son will return from the kill. He crouches. He lays down like a lion or a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, or the staff from between his feet, until he whose right it is comes, and the obedience of the people belong to him. He ties his donkey to a vine, and the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Oh my goodness! How?
Does he like Judah? I think so.
I think so. And what is he saying? Man, there's so much to say there. Of course, we like Judah because Jesus is from the line of Judah.
You see Jesus right there, the lion, the scepter,
Yeah.
the obedient, the donkey, the I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, okay, he says, your hand will be on the neck of your enemies, and your father's sons will bow down to you. So, no longer is it Joseph that they're bowing to. It's going to be Judah. When we return to the land, Judah's going to be the one. Okay, sure enough, it was Judah's tribe. But then there's all these beautiful pictures about this is not the wimpy Jesus that we make.
This is coming Christmas.
This is yeah. That's right. We're gonna have a long discussion at Christmas.
Have a baby in the cradle,
Yeah.
We're gonna go straight to the lion.
That's right. I really can't wait to just unpack a lot of this stuff.
Have you heard Jason Krabs? He won't be tied to a whipping post.
That's right.
I like that song.
Yeah.
He will not be tied to a whipping post that next time.
The other thing that he says is he ties his donkey to a vine. That means that it's tame. He tames everything. So he's fierce in that he demands his respect, but then everything's tame around him. So Zebulun will live by the seashore and will be a harbor for ships, and his territory will be next to Sidon. So yeah, that's the northern part. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between the saddlebags. He saw that his resting place was good and that the land was pleasant. So he leaned his shoulders to bear a load and became a forced laborer. Man, it's like, yeah, I can see why this would be terrible to try to, you don't really know where it's going until you finish. Dan will judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the road, a viper beside the path that bites the horse's heels so that its riders fall backwards. And then all of a sudden he says, I will wait for salvation, Lord. Like, it's not going to come from any of these sons of mine. I don't know. I mean, why does he throw that in there? I really am...
Was it halfway? Is that how many?
That would be, well, a little more than halfway, I think.
Like,
No, but it probably is halfway. And then there's Gad. Will be attacked by raiders, but he will attack their heels. Asher. Asher's food will be rich, and he will produce royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine beside a spring. Its branches climb over the wall. The archers attacked him, shot at him, and were hostile toward him. Yet his bow remained steady, and his strong arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the name of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, by the God of your fathers who helped you, by the Almighty who blesses you with blessings of the heavens above, blessings of the deep that lies below, and blessings of the breast and the womb. The blessings of your father excel the blessings of my ancestors, and the bounty of the ancient hills. May they rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince of his brothers. Man, that's got to be absolutely the longest one. And man, mentions everything. So Joseph's still his favorite. Benjamin is a wolf. He tears his prey. In the morning he devours the prey, and in the evening he divides his plunder. And that's that. These are the tribes of Israel, 12 in all, and this is what their father said to them. He blessed them, and he blessed each one with a suitable blessing. Only, yeah, some of that didn't sound like a blessing to me. So that is an interesting set of passages. You'd really have to, I think you'd have to do a lot of work to determine why and what all of those things really meant. So then he gives instructions for his burial. He commanded them, I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my ancestors in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hethite. That's where who is? Abraham. Yeah. The cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the land of Canaan.
It's all coming back.
Yeah. This is the field Abraham purchased from Ephron the Hethite as burial property. Abraham and his wife Sarah are buried there. Isaac and his wife Rebekah are buried there. And I buried Leah there. The field and the cave in it were purchased from the Hittites. When Jacob had finished giving charges to his sons, he drew his feet into his bed, took his last breath, and was gathered to his people.
Shelby was just tired of hearing the field and the cave were purchased from the Hittites. It just said it like 3 times. She was like, okay.
Why does the writer do that?
I don't know.
Why does he repeat it over and over?
It's in all of this, honestly. You can just feel the like cancellation of it, or I just hear it be recited around a campfire.
That's right.
Like in the wilderness of Sinai Peninsula, just like them just recounting everything that's happened in their ancestors' history.
That's right.
And they just memorize this, and it's all oral.
How do they share it with one another?
Yeah, they just repeat it. It's almost like a song, It's like and every little passage is like that in Genesis.
That's right.
Crazy.
And because they repeat, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, this is from the Torah, the first 5 chapters of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and so even today, those who are not completed Jews are still quoting this.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that's why today it still matters. And I only learned this because I went to Israel. I mean, they all tell you what tribe they're from, and they're just like the tribes. So what you're reading here, I remember Jane saying, "Oh, they're from that tribe. Oh, they're from that tribe." I mean, she would tell you what kind of people they are because they're from that tribe, and they believe it today.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating.
Like a zodiac sign.
Yeah, almost like a zodiac sign. Yeah. And you don't hear, the only time you ever hear about Hittites after the purchase of the property is when they refer to in relation to the burial ground. The Hittites kind of disappear. They're insignificant, but only for that it's the burial place, the Hittite land. All right, then Joseph, leaning on his father's face, wept and kissed him. He commanded his servants who were physicians to embalm his father. Oh, so they embalmed Israel. They took 40 days to complete this. I don't even want to know what that process was all about.
We'll demonstrate.
For embalming takes that long, and the Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. So they take 40 days to embalming, and they mourn for 70 days.
So embalming came from Egyptians?
Oh, yeah.
We do it today.
They were
we just mastered it. We can get it done the rest of the day.
Yeah.
They do it chemically too. They would I don't know what they do. Chemically.
There is a great. Remember when King Tut showed up in the United States and did the whole tour? There was a documentary film that went through the whole ancient Egyptian embalming thing. It's gruesome, but it's fascinating that how it worked.
You can still look at a dead person today from that was embalmed.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a mummified. They had unwrapped some woman. She was all shriveled up. It's like, man, how is that still here all these years later?
It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
It is truly amazing. And I mean, this was a long time ago, and they were dealing with an old science by then. Let's see. When the days of mourning were over, Joseph said to Pharaoh's household, "If I have found favor with you, please tell Pharaoh that my father made me take an oath saying, I am about to die. You must bury me there in the tomb that I made for myself in the land of Canaan. Now let me go and bury my father, then I will return." So Pharaoh said, "Go and bury your father in keeping with your oath." So Joseph went to bury his father. And all Pharaoh's servants, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went with him. So this is like the huge funeral procession
Yeah, he's second in command.
from all the important people. Yeah.
do like the president coming to our funerals.
All right. It said, along with all of Joseph's family, his brothers and his father's family, which we know there were 70 before. There's got to be more now. It's been almost 20 years. Only their dependents, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. Horses and chariots went up with them. It was a very impressive procession. When they reached the threshing floor at Atdad, that place, which is across the Jordan, they lamented and wept loudly. So they do it today, and they did it back then. And Joseph mourned 7 days for his father. When the Canaanite inhabitants of the land saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atdad, they said, "This is a solemn mourning on the part of the Egyptians." Therefore, the place is named, Abel. Yeah, it's across the Jordan. So,
Why the threshing floor?
I don't know. There's only one other place where the threshing floor is significant, and that's where David stops the death angel on the.
And Gideon.
And Gideon. That's right.
Threshing floor with Gideon and a threshing floor with David. But
In this threshing floor.
And of course, Joseph's there mourning at this place.
So let's think about that for a minute. All right.
Yeah.
So the threshing floor, two.
Kind of thing.
It's a depression, but two things happen at the threshing floor. The chaff is blown away, and the good stuff stays behind. So, is there a significance here in that regard? I'm really going to take a leap here because I'm having trouble. But Jacob's died and gone on to be, but they're in the place where the genealogy is to continue. That would be represented by the threshing floor, but I don't think that carries the same. I think it does for David, but I don't even remember the thing with Gideon. What happened there?
Oh, when the angel came, he was hiding in the threshing floor from the Canaanites or whoever was invading.
Okay.
Them. He was, yeah. I don't think
That
it was
mighty warrior was a scaredy cat.
big. Yeah, exactly.
That's where
he was like,
Yeah.
valiant Gideon, yeah.
Get up off that threshing floor, boy.
Yeah, I just remember him selecting his army
Right.
and how he did that. I'd forgotten that part.
It was when it first comes to him. But,
Anyway,
I feel like they just threw it in there as like a place name, like the threshing floor at Atad. Like,
could have been.
it just like makes, or maybe there was someone in that crowd that like knew, like, oh yeah, I had some family around there. I don't know.
And it's renamed the Morning of Egypt. Okay. After Joseph buried his father, he returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said to one another, If Joseph is holding a grudge against us, he will certainly repay us for all the suffering we caused him.
How many years has this been?
Oh, this has been so long now. So isn't it amazing how once you get a suspicious mind working, it's hard to let go. They don't trust their brother yet. So they really are feeling guilty about what they did. And they're really also feeling that, boy, maybe it would have been better to kill him because we wouldn't be worried about this now, but then they wouldn't have been able to survive anything that they survived. They're in a tough spot because of their past sins. Better to do what I preached on this morning. Just confess them and ask to be forgiven, which they had done, but they still couldn't let it go. So they sent a message to Joseph. Before he died, your father gave a command. Say this to Joseph. Now, is this true or not?
They lied again?
Golly, it takes a village to tell a lie. I mean, here they are. 10 of them again. I don't know
They've been
if
lying
Benjamin's...
all their lives.
Yeah, that's all they know.
Your son was eaten up.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it says the brothers, but it can't include Benjamin. He can't be a part of this. So,
Well, he didn't know anything was going on. He was a baby back then anyway. So
yeah, that's right.
he didn't know what was going on.
It said, so say this to Joseph, please forgive your brother's transgressions and their sin, the suffering they caused you. Therefore, please forgive the transgression of your servants, of the God of your father. So you would think that Jacob would have said this to Joseph himself, okay, instead of relying on the brothers. But what do we read? Joseph wept when their message came to him.
Didn't he already forgive him 15 years earlier?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he did.
Yeah. So there's, but see, the father was alive then. Now that the father's gone, see, they're thinking, oh man, Jacob's keeping a lid on Joseph. Now that he's gone, the lid's gonna blow, and he's gonna come after us. But in this thing, we always find the honesty of Joseph's emotions, because he's always weeping. When he's weeping about his brothers, he's weeping about about Benjamin. He's weeping over seeing his father. He's weeping over his burial. Joseph is the most honest, and we're allowed to know that because he keeps living through his emotions, and everyone else is not.
Well, he went through this whole entire life without these brothers. These brothers didn't do anything but stay like they are.
Right.
And stayed in their own little corner of the world. And he's being thrown into prison and chased by Potiphar's wife. And, all kinds of stuff is happening to him.
And remember,
he changed through all of it. He grew.
That's right. We find that place when he's in the prison. And it tells us that Joseph has put all that behind him. It's in the past for him. And so you kind of know at that point, he's just dealt with all of this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, these brothers show up. And you would think that Joseph would have this feeling in him, boy, I'm going to get those guys. They don't know who I am, but I know who they are, and I'm going to get them. But he doesn't. And why doesn't he?
I think because he never thought he'd see him again.
He never thought he would see him again, but his first concern, was Rachel's son, Benjamin, his brother, and his father. So what his brothers had done didn't matter anymore, but he was going to definitely use his brothers to determine the safety and care of his full brother and his father. So he was past it, and then we see that, well, maybe he wasn't really past it because he's got all this emotion, and it's not ever cruel. It's not ever the kind of emotion that bursts in anger. It is in this great compassion that he has, because he's going to be reunited with his family, even though they treated him like death. Whole thing's just great.
The power didn't corrupt him, whereas
Right.
other
And
people.
Joseph's always been a picture of Jesus in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Yeah, power corrupted other people, but it didn't corrupt Joseph.
So this, it says that he wept, and his brothers came to him. They bowed down. This is like the 7th or 8th time that they bowed down to him. And they declare, we are your slaves. Dun, dun, dun. So we got this foreshadowing picture that carries us into the end there. But they have nothing to give to Joseph. So this is that whole thing of hospitality that existed in this time. Joseph had given them their very life by providing them a place in Egypt where the land was flowing with milk and honey. It had become the new Garden of Eden for them. They were fruitful and multiplied. They had nothing to give to basically their Savior except their life. And that's the picture that we have for our life. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me, but God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people.
That verse is huge.
It's huge.
I wish it wasn't 7:10.
Huh?
I wish it wasn't 7:10 so we could talk on that. Go ahead.
Well, we can come back to it next time. There's no point in hurrying through. Yeah, it is kind of late. Therefore, don't be afraid. I will take care of you and your children. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them.
Jesus.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll stop there. And we'll come back to 18 when we start next time. On the... What day? There's a day in November. There's a Sunday in November. I'll be out of town.
Which one?
I don't know yet.
Why?
Thanksgiving before, after.
Oh, before. I'm going to Branson, Missouri. I'm taking my wife to Branson.
Y'all are gonna go without us?
Sounds
Oh,
like
the
it.
baby's having a fit.
Well, the thing was, we
Well,
were
we
all
all-
gonna go on a trip.
No, we're going back.
Oh, you guys are just gonna.
She's
go
just hankering to leave, and so we decided we would do that.
That's awesome.
So we haven't been anywhere for now. We're on 2 years, 2.5 years.
You'll wait
We used to
till
make-
Christmas.
we-
We used to make yearly.
Yeah, we went to
Since
year before last. We went to Tennessee. Was that last year?
No, it was
year
the
before
last.
last.
We didn't go anywhere last year.
That was our last trip anywhere.
And that's
And
weird. She tried to liquidate everything and move up there.
Literally.